Welcome everybody to the May 5th edition of the Analytics Weekly. So we are recording. We have a couple of FYIs up there. The first thing that is verbalized is walking through the blockers. So does anybody have any blockers that they're facing right now? We can just kind of walk through them real quick. Cool. Well, that's easy. And then John Mason, do you want to walk us through any new on-deck issues, or I guess any additional on-deck issues that we haven't walked through before?
There was just one that we talked about a little bit yesterday, and that was just a continued work on the generic APIs to break it down into the next step. And see if I can pull that up. Why don't you come back to me?
Okay, fair enough. Let me get back over the agenda here. Let's see, we have next section is interesting problems and solutions from last week. So Nick, you're up.
Okie doke. Yeah, I've got a couple things. I made a little video of this. I've been talking about object model for a while, so I made a little video right here, giving a 10-minute overview of like using objects and how you can use objects to inform UX strategy and then use it basically to determine where you can invest your efforts. So this is like the first step of helping designers across GitLab think a little bit more strategically about how they're investing their effort in their side of the product, and then how that impacts the design system, and having like a similar map of the territory so people can do it. So I won't go into the actual video, but this is the accumulation of around 7 months worth of thinking that I've had. And I feel like now it's finally getting to a point where it's not just verbose and ridiculously hard to interpret and abstract. I feel like now it's actually starting to get to a point where people will hopefully understand it. I don't know. Maybe I'm going crazy after 7 months of trying, but we'll see. So yeah, take a look at this video. Let me know your thoughts, and hopefully this will also be a useful tool to align our efforts around different disciplines as well, like back-end, front-end, and design. So this aligns very nicely with John Mason's generic generic API. I didn't go into that in too much detail in this video because this was more sort of design focused to start out with, but I could probably do a little version which talks about that. Any questions, comments on the object model thing?
Quick question. You said you were open to feedback. Are you looking for any particular kind of feedback, or just sort of generally?
So I think the foundational thing with this object model is it's describing at a high level how GitLab works, and using objects to show workflows and how stuff is organized. So when watching the video, in the back of your mind, maybe think, if this was presented to my parents, would they understand even at a high level, would they understand what I'm talking about? And then also think about areas for opportunity of how it could be used or how it could be adapted for your area of discipline.
Cool, that's helpful.
Cool. And also aligning with this object model thing that I've talked about, I've created a region, which is effectively like a complicated component. And this is like this is trying to basically unify a lot of the disparate components that we have across GitLab. And it does this by having like a basic and advanced search filtering pattern. And it's best illustrated with this little prototype here. I think we can still simplify this down further. but basically, if you want to have a little bit more space on the page, you can make it hidden. If you don't know how to do like search queries, then you can have a nice little easy drop-down experience. And if you are more of a power user and you know how to do these queries, you can have it in that format. And you can also save different search and filter combinations in a filter set to be used across the product in a nice and quick way. So this is a little bit like deep linking, but also applying it to like a little save pattern. So this is the first stab and iteration of trying to unify our filter pattern across GitLab. And I'm you know, I think there's more iteration to be had on it, and I'm hoping to get some feedback from the different stage groups. But yeah, I'm interested to know what you think, how complicated it would be to implement from front end and back end perspective. Yeah, and whether it's over solutioning a problem that we have. That looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I like it also. One question you mentioned about storing, you know, your searches or your filters.
Mm-hmm.
I see a few potential issues there from security point of view. It depends how would we persist it. But I guess we would have this per group, right? So if you have a tons of searches in a group, then we would store it for that particular group, right? Your recent searches.
Yeah, I actually haven't thought about at what level you'd store it, whether you do it at the individual level, at just at the individual's level, and whether it's just like an individual has their own sort of filter sets. I actually haven't thought about it to that level of detail, so that's an interesting question.
Maybe I can provide some more a little bit of information like how it's implemented at the moment, because we already have like the recent searches drop down, which I guess works in a similar fashion in terms of how we persist data. So at the moment we just use local storage on the front end, so it's not going through the API at all, so it's not persisted on the back end. And then the way it works at the moment is that I think we create like a namespace, like a key for every, depending on the URL. So if you are in a specific group and in a specific project, and then you are on the issues page, based on the route that you are on, we would create the storage key for the local storage to persist the recent searches. So if you go to like a different group, you would have like a different key to look up your search history. So that's the way it works at the moment. I haven't really thought about whether this is the right way to do it, or whether we should like use the backend to persist data. But that's just the way it works at the moment. So.
Okay, that sounds good. I mean, for start, the only problem with the local storage, it's not persisted between session, right? Because it's only in your current browser.
Exactly, and yeah.
So I guess if you you bookmark something where a project ID is pre-selected, right? A project is pre-selected, and then in the meantime you are removed from the project. Even if you send that request to the backend, you will get a 401, like an error where you have no access to. So that's much safer than actually try to store it in the backend and apply permissions there.
Yeah, and I guess if you clear your local storage, or yeah, any of your browser data, it will be gone. So you won't see any of this in the recent searches drop down. So it's up to you whether you wanna like how you if you want to clear your data. I think like most users who don't really know about the underlying implementation, they probably they don't really care about it. So but it could lead to confusion when users clear the local storage, and then they realize, okay, all my searches are gone. So yeah.
Okay, cool.
Great. I understood every single aspect of that. So thank you very much. I'll pass it back over to well, John Mason.
All right. So we last week had a Forrester briefing. They're doing their next wave on value stream management, where they identify vendors that are in different levels of robustness with their offerings and vision. And that's where we'll really get compared to competitors and so on. They'll probably be out in a few months. Last time around, GitLab was about 18 months ago. I'd say GitLab did surprisingly well for the level of capability that we had, but I think our sort of all-in-one application vision is unique enough that it got us some attention, and this time around the competition is going to be quite a bit stiffer. So I would expect that we're going to slip a little bit in the ranking, but I think we're well positioned to come back strong in another 18 months or so when they do this for the third time. I wanted to share with you some things that I shared with the analysts. Just a couple of slides to help you understand kind of where my head is about GitLab. I think, as you see on this slide, there are a couple of things that are very special about GitLab that none of the other competitors in the space have. Most other competitors in this space either have standalone products that have to sit on top of a collection of other best of breed software, and so in order to get it to work, you've got to spend quite a bit of time mapping and integrating it. And analysts are very interested in those features because the standalone competitors, that's exactly the way that they work. And sort of the amount of openness of the system and the number of integrations that you have are important there. The problem with those is that the time to value is very poor. It takes a long time to actually get the thing plugged in, running, and get the data that you would want out of it. And the other problem is that it's not really part of users' everyday workflows. And GitLab, because we are a single app that people are already using every day, has an opportunity both to do very well in terms of time to value. As soon as I flip over to an analytics area, there are already pages that tell me about what's going on, and so I can already get some benefits from it. And then the if we embed analytics in the everyday user workflows, we have an opportunity to actually produce results in a way that these other vendors can't. If you're producing primarily a dashboarding capability, you're going to look at that on an occasional basis to make decisions, and you might spin up some kind of improvement initiative around it, but it's not going to be affecting each user's everyday decision making all that much. And this is where I think GitLab has a huge opportunity to actually, through the use of analytics, be helping every single user every day as they're going about their normal work. So I wanted to share this with you because the way that we have thought about analytics in the past is largely about dashboards that you can get to through this menu on the left side sidebar, where there are different pages. and you would go to that particular page to see some analytics data, see some analysis. And I think we need to shift the way that we think about analytics to helping users become more efficient and in their work, and to work more intelligently, more informed, because we're bringing analytics to users where they are. And when we track usage of analytics features, we'll start tracking it not just in our pages, but we'll track it when they're actually using capabilities embedded throughout the product. The other thing I think that's really going to be valuable for us in doing that is it won't be so hard to get people to use analytics. Instead, it'll be right there where they're ordinarily working, and reach for it, where they can reach for it. There's a few obvious places where we would be able to embed analytics. One is in personal work queues. So you've seen to-do, the to-do work that we're exploring. Another is in visual management boards. So if you look at the Kanban board that's in GitLab today, there's lots of opportunity for analytics to actually inform what's happening in that experience. And Nick and I have already started collaborating with Gabe Weaver and his design team to explore some opportunities there. And then customers have asked for analytics related to product and program management, epics and roadmaps and stuff. And there's also things, of course, we could embed in individual work items. We can't do it all at once, but these are the kinds of experiences that we're looking at making richer. And I would say one of the ones that really stands out to me as being an important place for us to contribute is around the plan area. We've got developers that like to use issues, but a lot of customers are telling us that their product managers and scrum masters can't really use GitLab because it doesn't have the analytics that they need in that area. So we'll be taking a hard look at that. So the point that this is I'm trying to get to here is that these embedded experiences will be less expensive to build and also more flexible if they're built on top of a layer that's more generic. And that's one of the things that we're really trying to focus on near term is generic APIs and then UI elements that sit on top of that, that leverage those. Eventually, we may expose that capability in basic dashboarding, but the real short-term target is the embedded experiences around that. So the first step of that, let's see, I'm thinking will be around this idea of a generic analytics Drillin page. And this is, if I were to click on a widget that had a metric in it or a little sparkline graph embedded somewhere else, it would take me to this page where I could see the full-size chart and the data table beneath it, such as we're doing in issues analytics today. So we're working on refining this issue to be a complete experience that will be pretty flexible, so that wherever whatever metric I'm or sparkline metric card or sparkline that I'm coming to, I wind up landing in the same place and having the same sort of experience around filtering that chart and exploring it and so on. All right, I'm sure I've used more than my fair share of the time, so I will pass the ball.
So one comment on that Drillin page is with the object model that I've been talking about. What you described is basically a report object. So and then this report object can be used for different instances for issues or MRs or whatever it may be. So I think these things like link up very nicely. And what I'm hoping is we can start to like align on the language that we start using. And what I'm hoping is that the object model stuff that I'm talking about becomes like a common language that we can use to link up when I say report object, or when you say drill down thing, you know, we're just speaking in the same terms.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a question. So this sounds pretty interesting. So as far as I understand, we're like moving from having a dedicated analytics page into like enriching existing pages or areas of the application with analytics features by leveraging the generics API. And this is like obviously still work in progress and quite high level at the moment. So I wonder, do we already have like an idea what could be the first, is the to-dos app the first place where we want to integrate or where we want to make use of this generics API, or are we thinking about a different place like the board that John Mason talked about earlier?
Well, a couple of ideas that have come to mind are the to-dos, also the landing page for groups. You know, we have some recent activity metrics there. That might be a great place to drill in. Continuing to work on the issues analytics page and sort of turning that into a generic page. That sort of on my plate to try to sort out this afternoon where would be a good place to start. If you have opinions about that, I'm all ears, and would love your feedback on that. But that issue, that Drillin page issue, is going to start getting really specific about, you know, with some rough wireframes and so you know, very specific ideas about where those metrics are coming from.
And is that just I was going to pick that one up today, John Mason. Is that the one that I should be prioritizing? Yeah.
Yes. So, and in the background, one other thing to say is in the background, you know, we have this vision for the value stream analytics page that has the value stream across the top, and then it has the individual cards with the drill in and so on. The intent is not to you know, move away from that entirely. I think that's part of the time to value, but we also need to take a little pause and take a look at what we're doing, because some of the calculations that we're doing on that page are problematic. Some of the we've got some good user feedback now on usability issues with the page. So we're going to kind of hit a little bit of a reset, working with customers to really make sure we've got the basics working before we you know, build a lot of new things in that area.
So I think if that wraps up that section, we have just a couple of minutes here left. Martin, do you want to go through what you have in the bonus content section, or do you feel like we have enough time?
It depends. If people are in a hurry, we can always postpone it to next week. But if you guys have a few more minutes, I'd love to like briefly talk about those topics.
I always forget that this is scheduled for 40 minutes and not 25. Yeah, I think we are good on time then. I'm sorry.
Cool. Yeah, so the context for those two items that I added to the agenda is so Dan, or basically we started, or Dan created an issue for an manage or analytics iteration retrospective, and the feedback or a few things that popped up during this iteration retrospective. The first thing was a question about, so we developed a couple of analytics features over the last few months or over the last year, and including like productivity analytics, code review analytics, and obviously value stream management or value stream analytics. And the question is, we built like, I think most features are not an MVC anymore, but the idea was to build an MVC. And the question is, are there any plans on like upcoming iterations, or do you think, especially the question goes especially to John Mason from a product perspective, are we planning on like implementing feedback, if there is any feedback from users into those features, and what is the like mid or long term perspective for moving on with those features?
Great, thank you for raising that. So one of the things that I've been doing in my first 60 days at GitLab is trying to understand who's using our stuff and what they're using it for and what their experience has been like. And I've met with a handful of customers. I've been part of customer advisory board meetings, a couple of customer advisory board meetings where we talk to customers. I've worked to try to find internal users and talk to internal users about their usage of these features. And the long and the short of it is, and I've also cranked on metrics that we can get from Sisense and Snowplow to look at actual, page hits and so on. And what I would say is that first of all, the page that appears to get the most use in analytics is contribution analytics. Does that surprise you? It surprised me a little bit, but that's actually seems to be one of the best used pages. There are a lot of things I think internally we ought to be using analytics for, but that the people who would be likely consumers of those have felt that there were enough shortcomings in the capability. They've gone and built duplicate functionality in Sisense. And that's not good. We don't want internal users building in their own dashboards, if we've got it baked into the product. So I started an epic that talked about, what do we have to do to get internal users to use our stuff more? And as I started to go down the list, one of the things I noticed was that there are things that would be required kind of all over. Well, let me give a concrete example. One of the things that users internally want to be able to do with charts is embed them in our handbook pages. Another thing that they want to be able to do is annotate them with target lines. Well, both of those kinds of things, if you look at all the kinds of charts we have, we'd have to add that feature in a whole bunch of different places to get the level of coverage that that we need. So that part of what's motivating some of this generic functionality is to say, listen, if we've got one Drillin page, then we only have to change that thing in one place, and we'll be able to get to internal users much faster. we are going to be taking a much more rigorous approach to looking at how customers use our stuff. We're implementing a North Star metric along with all the other product teams that will measure the weekly active users. You know, other teams are doing different kinds of things. What we will be measuring is weekly active users for our analytics capability. And then when we decide to do something new, the idea is we will have users in mind who are going to, as soon as it comes out of the other end of the release, we know they're going to start using it. Either internal users to start dog fooding it, or external users that are working with us in a partnership. So that's really important, because otherwise, you know, we just keep building things and people come and they look at them, they kick the tires, but then they go away, and we don't want that. So did I answer your question, Martin?
Yeah. Thanks for the explanation and for providing more context and motivation behind for using or implementing the generics API. I guess part of the, or from my understanding, part of the reason why contribution analytics might be the most used feature in analytics is probably because it's very straightforward and easy to understand. So I guess everyone knows what contribution means. You click on the page and then you see a chart, or like multiple charts per, or like one chart per user, which gives you the actual number of contributions over time for that particular user. So I guess part of the problem why other analytics pages are not being used more often is that maybe they are not as intuitive as contribution analytics, or people don't really understand how this analytics feature helps them in getting the data that they are looking for.
Yeah, I think part of it is just knowing it's there in the first place and knowing what to do with it, and knowing, you know, how to get started. And then even for some internal users that are more willing to stick with it, you know, because we have a lot of different analytic experiences. We've got productivity analytics, we've got contribution analytics, we've got, you know, all these different things. Knowing where to go to find what they need is also hard. I think when we have more of a generic kind of library of metrics that you can add to a dashboard, that will also, you know, really help, so that I'm not, you know, going lots of different places. And then that's one thing that would really help the field. I think one of the things that the field struggles with is they get customers asking them, hey, help me, you know, show me what you can do with analytics. Show me, you know, help me make a development dashboard. Help me make a dashboard for my executive. And that's very hard to do to tell that story in GitLab today. You have to go to tons of different pages to say, well, we've got a little over the stuff over here in the security dashboard. We've got this other stuff over here, you know, and these analytics features. And we've got insights over here. And it's not a coherent story. Whereas if we've got this kind of generic dashboarding capability, you could just pull metrics from all over the product and go plop, 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 plop. Here's exactly what you wanted to see, you know, and it helps you to tell that story much better.
Yes, so it's easier to like build a single source of truth rather than having everything distributed across the entire application. Okay, cool. We have like 5 more minutes. The other topic that I just wanted to bring up today is something that we probably learned from building those big features over the last time was that, in my opinion, we didn't do a very great job in on iteration. So we built those big features, which took us more than 1 or 2 milestones to finish. And in the meantime, we didn't get the chance to like gather any feedback from customers, whether the feature is going to be useful, how they want to use the feature, things like that. So I think we should really do a better job on iteration by like having like the vision in mind, but also being able to break things up into smaller issues, which we can pretty much guarantee to deliver in one milestone. And I'm not talking about like we should deliver something that doesn't have value to the customer, but rather like ship just one piece of functionality that could be useful, rather than waiting for the entire feature and then ship it like 2 months afterwards. So that's something I guess we all have to improve and work together on doing a better job when it comes to iteration. So there's this this open iteration issue. I guess so Dan open it. Thanks for doing that, Dan. I guess we can just link it, and I also posted it in the analytics channel. So I'd love to hear everyone's feedback on this particular issue in terms of how we can improve iteration in the future, and what are the things that we learned from previous mistakes. And maybe we can pick one of the upcoming issues. I listed 2 potential candidates, which would be like issue analytics and throughput analytics. And I really like the way that Nick added the midterm vision in form of a screen design to those issues, because it makes it so much easier to understand the bigger picture, but by the same time being able to say, okay, we can like just pick one part of it and then be able to deliver that in one issue or in one milestone. And then also from a technical perspective, if we know that like how the whole vision or the long-term vision of that feature is going to look like, it's also easier to plan the architectural perspective and things like that. So yeah, if you have other candidate issues or other issues that you think that we can use for the future to start like improving iteration, then please feel free to add them to the issue.
Thanks for making that a focus. That's super important.
I don't know about everyone else, but I'm starting to feel like a lot of the stuff that we're doing is coming together. So I'm excited for what the future holds.
I think we're on the right track for sure.
Awesome. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our agenda for today. So thanks everybody for joining, and we'll go ahead and close it out. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.